Hello and welcome back to Belgium in the Great War Abridged. Last time we were just defending the area around Strasburg against various Austro-Hungarian and German armies. Along the way we learned the extreme pros and cons of using machine gun bunkers, and now we've been attacked by some Germans and Italians at the same time, and we're just going to try and take them all on at once in a defensive-ish battle at Strasburg. We're being attacked from two sides, with the Italians coming in from the south and the Germans coming from the northwest just behind us. You can see I've pretty much split my army. Half the army is out in the field ready to stop the Italian advance, and the rest is distributed among the town nearby, going to try and set up some traps to stop the Germans from outflanking us. Things are starting off with the usual artillery battle, and we'll just wait for the Italians to gradually walk towards us once they get their acting gear. On the outside of the town, I had this machine gun crew that I thought may be able to gun the enemy down as they approach the outskirts of this town, but it's not that easy because, for whatever reason, the machine gun crew does not accept my attack orders. Whenever I give an attack order, it moves instead, and so this ends up with this happening. The enemy's cavalry run in and kill the machine gun crew, and it ends up being completely useless. Some nearby militia are firing from a building, so that will drive those cav away for now. And they eventually just made their way through the town, which is just what I wanted because they'll end up suddenly coming around the corner, and here we are in the centre. I've got 3 or 4 units around the church with trenches in the town centre. That's going to be our main defensive position. One of the big issues for me as the player is to micro those guys to actually stay in the trenches and keep facing the right directions, because the AI does like to mess that up. And of course, when you give your men movement orders, that means they can't fire for a long time, and things like this happen, where some cavalry charge the front of my infantry and actually make it. They die pretty much right away, and it was at this time that I noticed that the unit further back is actually turning around and shooting into the back of my own men. We got some serious friendly fire. Everyone's supposed to be facing forwards, but I guess the AI kind of knows when enemies are behind it and turns the arc of fire in a somewhat intelligent way that's being annoying in this case. We lost our conscripts, our militia, out on the edge of town because the building they were in collapsed. I had completely forgotten that was even a possibility, but yes, while being shelled, the buildings aren't actually that safe for us, although most buildings can't be destroyed, I think. Now I had some issues with my mortar team. You'd think a mortar would be perfect right here because we can set it up in the town and fire at advancing units from a safe position, but the team doesn't have their mortars. They're off the siege pieces and I don't know where they are. At some point they must have interpreted an attack order as a move order and just run off somewhere. So those mortars are not going to be of any use to us whatsoever. There's another case of our men being completely out of formation just for no reason. Really is a nightmare trying to get your men to just do nothing in this game. Now gradually the Germans are starting to filter their way into the town. One of the leading units was this flamethrower squad. They're getting pretty close and I was getting pretty worried. My men aren't paying any attention to them in this case, not sure why. Eventually they get their act together and gun the flamethrowers down before they set our big tightly packed formation on fire. Thank you very much. Outside the town, the battle with the Italian army is just getting started, and here we've got another machine gun crew that this time was more useful. Machine guns far outrange rifles for some reason, so we can have them behind our line firing over the top at these distant enemies. These guys are just sniping away at us. The machine guns aren't accurate like the machine gun bunker, so the shots land all over the place and very rarely actually hit targets towards their maximum range. But it's just like a damage over time effect. It will gradually kill enemies with not much risk to the machine gun crew themselves. More chaos back near the church as everyone needs to start getting back in formation. These men are all facing the wrong direction as the enemy charge up to the trenches. Gonna have to micro them and they eventually shuffle their way around and start firing at the enemy. Luckily the Germans aren't making a particularly decent attack. They're not shooting at us, for example, so we're not taking huge losses despite the potential here, and another unit outflanking the advancing enemy will finish the Germans in that area off and we will be fine. The main fight's about to start over here with the Italians, and I noticed at this moment that my machine guns are technically facing the wrong direction. Their arc of fire is going backwards, but they do appear to be firing at the enemy, so just going to leave them to it. I saw before that giving the machine gun crew any orders causes them to never fire, so I didn't want to risk it. I just left them where I deployed them for the whole battle. We're also going to have an infantry fight going on where, of course, we'll have the advantage of trenches. Our men are not always using the trenches effectively, as you can see, but it will mean we'll have an advantage. The enemy also have quite a lot of conscript troops who are easy to rout, so that will help us out as well. In the town, looks like things are going well. Our men are shooting the enemy. Finally, it's working out and the enemy are going to take huge losses trying to engage with us while we have the trenches here. We're going to gradually get whittled down, but it's all good stuff. Back on the front lines with Italy, more micro required as our men are just walking off, just rotating randomly. We've got some serious glitches to deal with here. The machine guns should be doing good work though. The enemy are a bit closer. You can kind of see the shots landing, the little black particle effects. They're landing all over the place and they must be sometimes killing enemies. They're not getting absolutely mowed down or anything, but over the course of a couple of minutes, while you're not really looking, you probably will kill a whole unit over time. Back near the church now, things are going poorly again as our men are not firing at the enemy for a while. They have on and off periods. I've changed the formation a bit to reduce the chance of friendly fire, so all of our guys now have clear lines of fire on the enemy. You can see our guys just there walking away from the trench for no reason, so I have to re-give them orders to form up. Same for those guys who weren't firing. And while I was distracted by all that micro, there's a bit of a disaster going on our left flank. The Italians have gone around the edge of our line with a few units, some good AI, although I'm sure it was an accident, and now we're in trouble. We've got a melee going on the left side of the line, but because the rest of the Italian army routed in the gun battle, we are going to be able to turn around and deal with that. Near the church, things are getting real messy. We're starting to take substantial losses because our men just aren't firing at the enemy and are spending most of their time rotating and trying to get into cover. The Italian general dies somewhere out there in the field, so that's good news. And as you can see, I've just turned back most of the line to deal with this flank incursion. They did take out one of my artillery guns, and also I'm shelling myself because the guns further back are firing into that melee. But things work out, there go the enemy troops. So the Italian army is pretty much dead now. They're all routing off the map. The main strength with the enemy is in that German force. Said German troops are causing a bit of trouble here near the church because our own men aren't doing very well holding them off. Really, our guys are just rotating and shuffling about, even with the enemy right in front of them, so we are taking some extreme casualties among the leading units, trying to wrangle my men back into position to make them fight properly, but it's just not always that easy. In this case, the Germans have successfully gone over one of my entrenchments and are now in the square fighting with us in melee. The unit that's fighting there is going to get taken out, and we've barely got any troops left to defend further up the square near the church entrance. We're going to be moving our general line of defence back and just defend our side of the square now. We've still got plenty of choke points and good angles to use. So there goes our unit in melee. One of the German squads came back outside the square, and our men in the street could just cut them down. But again, there's some kind of delay. It's just not that easy. After giving a few attack orders, finally shots are fired at the last possible second as the enemy was charging at us. They are cut down at close range and the entire enemy unit is wiped out, and very, very quickly that takes a lot of the pressure off in this area. The other unit routed facing our survivors, and with that the German infantry is pretty much expended. Meanwhile, I've sent a few men out to the other side of the map to finish off the Italian army. They do still have some artillery and the odd unit back there. The German general's back there as well. So yeah, it's just going to advance to real close range with infantry to try and deal with that. There's also one Italian unit in the town, and I'm manoeuvring my one healthy unit to finish them off. The artillery's helping out as well, as we can see, even destroying the town in the process. Very nice and dramatic. Off they go. And with that, the town is secured. There's still German artillery out there firing at us, but it's already been pummeled by our own artillery and there's just not that much of it, so that's all fine. We need to hammer this battle home by finishing off the Italians, really. In this case, I was able to use some trenches set up by the Italians to fire at their men, so that was very nice. Those men don't really die, and I had to advance to point-blank range because for some reason they just weren't dying as I shot them. And even here, after I've just stood right in front of them and started firing, these engineers seem to die really slowly. I suspect they have more than one hit point, or our men are just very bad. We have seen before, we have lots of inaccurate troops in our faction, and this appears to be a case where we just can't quite hit the enemy, even at what I presume is well under the effective range of a rifle. Could be the old psychological thing where our troops aren't aiming at the enemy, being accidentally simulated by the game's weirdness. Out here somewhere was that German general, spotted him riding around. I think we're seeing the similar glitch to what we saw earlier, where he got shot loads of times before he died, because if you listen very carefully, I think you could hear some of the dying sound effects before he died. I don't really know what happened. Anyway, with him going, everything else went, and that was the end of the battle. We picked up another tasty heroic victory. It wasn't that good for us, really. We lost more than half of our army taking the enemy down, a lot of it to the Italian attack, and a lot of that was due to the enemy's artillery gradually killing us throughout the fight, which was hard to tell from the way I was filming it there, but we were being pummeled the whole time. At least the enemy lost something like 5,000 or 6,000 troops, the siege is broken, and we can replenish for a turn, so things will be relatively okay. The German army is building up at the border quite a lot and sending quite a lot of men over that border into our territory. It seems that some kind of showdown is building here. Lots of armies are appearing. It's probably been a long time since the British or French bothered to attack the enemy, and if the Russians are performing similarly, it might just be that it's basically Germany versus us this war. That's certainly how it seems to be. Now, I waited another turn doing nothing because I just needed to replenish and defend, and the German build-up continues. Now there are 3 armies near Brussels, and they've still got lots of troops near Strasburg. There we invented caterpillar tracks, which will surely come in useful later if we can survive long enough to throw out some tanks against the enemy. As for my strategy, we continue doing absolutely nothing because there are no good attacks to make and we're still replenishing. And the enemy aren't attacking us either, you probably noted, which is great because at one point I had literally 1 unit defending the road to Brussels against those 2 armies that were out there. But now we've managed to reinforce and we've got a few units on the river crossing. Those 3 armies may not be able to break through that river crossing now. The Italians are making more effort to attack us. They've got an army now besieging Strasburg once again, so we're back pretty much where we were just a few turns ago. As for the Germans, I don't think they really want to attack us. Many of their armies appear to be moving past us. It looks like they're going to attack France, which is absolutely perfect for us. That should take the pressure off. It does mean that France needs to win those potential battles, otherwise we'll be in even more trouble, but they do have loads of stuff back there, so it's perfectly plausible. I was looking over to the east because in the past France had actually captured some territory out there, but I think they've been fully pushed back and now it's just us on the front line getting swarmed. Anyway, no matter the situation, the first thing we need to do right now is get rid of this Italian army currently besieging Strasburg. The army looks pretty standard, loads of low quality troops, but a few decent ones as well, including snipers with extreme range, which I was a bit worried about because we can't just leave our men on fire at will and hope that we kill them. We'll have to actually move towards them. Gameplay, not my style. Those snipers were being cheeky chappies right from the very beginning actually. I was sitting there shelling the enemy position to make them attack me, and I could hear rifle fire coming from their side of the map. So I started looking around thinking the snipers must already be here somewhere firing at me, but I couldn't see them. Figured the unit was pretty small, but I thought I should be able to at least mouse over their unit flag. However, I was saved when I happened to notice little puffs of smoke going off here in the grass. This must be the rifles firing, you can even hear them going off. So yes, these snipers can fire from a hidden position. That's going to make them hard to take down. All I can do is attack ground with my artillery and hope that they hit something. Unlikely because the unit's small, as I said. But there we go, an explosion goes off and the bodies can't hide, so the sniper unit's definitely there. Luckily it's not doing that much damage to us. I guess firing at maximum range with our guys in cover means they're not going to be utilised to their full effect. They're not going to take out my machine gun crews or something. And by the way, look at the enemy's artillery. They've deployed them behind a hill, so the spirit of the Dark Artillery Lord is with us today. That means we're going to be free to do absolutely nothing, pretty much. We'll just sit here, shelling the enemy to pieces as they advance, and not being very shelled to pieces in return. Once the enemy get close, we can start using our machine guns. The terrain is a bit dodgy here. I need my machine guns to shoot over the top of my front line, and that's only possible while the enemy is uphill from us. So as they advance down the hill, the machine guns might start inflicting friendly fire, so I was very cautious about this. And here this was a bit disconcerting. This machine gun's basically pointed right at the backs of my own men, but I think it is technically firing up the hill. but with no projectile trails it's kind of hard to tell. So maybe they're killing some enemies, our artillery is definitely killing some enemies, they're gradually getting killed all over the place, and because our artillery's pretty high level now, having got loads of kills, their accuracy stats seems to have increased, we're more reliably killing stuff with them. Now here we are a bit later, the enemy's getting closer, the machine gun fire is getting dodgier, and the line battling is beginning. This unit on my right flank needs to be told to go back in place. Remember those guys, because we'll come back to them in a sec. As for the main fight, we're going to have the usual advantage. We've got cover, the enemy are wandering around, lots of the enemy troops are conscripts, so just a case of shooting them to pieces. And what I'm going to be doing as the player is trying to make sure my machine guns keep firing at things that are sufficiently far away that we're not killing my own men. Couldn't really tell if we were killing my own men because I wasn't looking closely enough, but maybe that helped, hard to say. Then I checked back in with the unit that I told to go into cover after it started walking out, and again it's left cover and was standing with its flank to an enemy unit and has got itself killed. So that's some nice independent AI going on there. Still no idea why units change their positions without orders, it's very strange. So we destroyed the enemy infantry, suffice to say, then we just advanced the whole line forwards to start shooting up the enemy artillery. And I noticed, if you look in the bottom left here, we're actually losing a load of men right now. And that's because the friendly fire AI is pretty bad, so when you have line infantry units standing next to each other, sometimes they shoot to the side and hit each other as well. It's pretty dire. Another heroic victory and an achievement for it as well, but that achievement was just for playing some number of hours of the game, wasn't actually related to the battle. Wanted to see if my machine guns really contributed to the fight, because it was hard to tell, and apparently they did, so that's good news. Although I'm sure they contributed to the fact that about 25% of our casualties in this battle were friendly fire. So yes, a very iffy unit to use, those machine guns. Anyway, that means the Italian siege is broken. Annoyingly, they retreated back to where the German armies are, so if we want to chase them down and finish that army off, we'll end up also in battle with all these other units at the same time. So, because of that, I just didn't bother. I'm being very passive in this campaign, just giving myself a break, really. What I wanted to do at this stage was end our war with someone. We've seen before that Germany is willing to have little peace treaties now and again. I thought maybe Italy would give up since we rebuffed their invasion there, but no, and no one else did either. So we're still going to be at war on all these different fronts. Basically, Belgium is fighting all of the enemy powers at the same time. Very unfair. Here's a look at the Germans' next turn. And things don't seem to be going very well. We see a French army defeated on our border, and there's now 2 German armies just over there, adding on to the 2 or 3 already in our territory. Not very nice. Basically, we're really outclassed here. The Germans have loads of troops, and some of them are moving, well, I thought into France, but we'll see. They're not moving into France at all. They're just bypassing our bridge and going the long way towards Belgium. Here on this bridge, north of Strasburg, there was this army that had loads of cav in it, and I thought that's going to be pretty easy to defeat actually. That's not as bad as it looks. We're in a situation where wherever we move, we'll be attacked from another direction. We are surrounded by armies that could easily take Strasburg, and if we lose that, we won't have the money to have an army at all, so we have to hold it. But in order to play the game and progress, we also have to leave and try to do something in the campaign. So it's a bit of a difficult situation. Really, we need France to be taking out some of these armies for us. But so far, no sign of them caring. They've done a few offensives, but now their armies are just standing around and even letting German armies march through French territory. Anyway, I decided to try and do something, and that was this. I'm going to split most of the infantry away from the army. Figured this force here will easily be enough to hold even against a couple of stacks if the enemy attack the city. And this infantry line should be enough to take down loads of cav out there, although that didn't come to anything because the cav just disappeared off. Now then, at the start of the next turn, we got some interesting news. We've now recruited a plane, so we can finally do some recon on what the Germans have. The plane is a pretty weird unit. It kind of waddles along, but it has huge movement range, so in one turn we can scout out most of the front line and just see what the Germans have back there. But it's not good for morale. They just have loads of stuff. I might have thought before that all of their armies were in our territory, but they've got plenty of reserve armies. I'm pretty sure there just is no Eastern Front in this war, and they've just sent everything against us. Anyway, my next plan was to place all of my detached army onto a bridge in enemy territory to see if I could force some kind of favourable crossing and maybe start withering away all the enemy units out there. Could even send some artillery to support. But they were not attacked in the end, so it didn't work out. So here we are in the next turn, and I'm realising now the thing I mentioned earlier. The Germans are just going towards Brussels via the long way. They're not attacking France, and France are not attacking the Germans. So we're in trouble. The enemy can attack Brussels in one turn now. I'm going to take some of the men defending the eastern river crossing back to the city, so we have something back there. But I do need to also leave something on the river crossing, because there's even more troops there that we need to keep blocking and making sure they don't come towards Brussels. We've ended up with both of our provinces pretty much under siege then. They're both surrounded by enemy armies, and we don't have the strength to defend both of them right now, and our offensive just hasn't done anything because the enemy are ignoring us, and we don't really have the strength to just go and plough through armies and try and take territory, especially because the territory in this area is worse than the territory we already have in terms of buildings. So it's better, I think, to hold Strasburg than to, say, try and attack Stuttgart and hold that instead. Anyway, I hope you'll join me for the next part, when the fact that we're surrounded by the enemy pays dividends for them and they start attacking us, and it's going to require some heroics for Belgium to hang on holding this front line.